Hi, I read the biography of Nirvana and Kurt Cobain called Heavier Than Heaven. It's written by Charles R. Cross. Uh, yeah, and it began in early April 1994. The news that Kurt Cobain, lead singer of Nirvana, had been was found dead was spread. In Seattle, teenagers flocked around Cobain's house and laying out roses. Not long afterwards, some of them tried to copy his suicide, and Kurt Cobain's almost Jesus-like face was printed on T-shirts and was bought by even more depressed teenagers. As a frontman of one of the greatest music groups in the 90s, Kurt Cobain reluctantly became an icon for millions of people. Nirvana started as a small band in Seattle, formed in 1987, and had their first single called Love Buzz in 98. Kurt Cobain referred a lot to Neil Young. He thought Neil Young was the godfather of grunge. Kurt Cobain mentioned the lyrics from Neil Young's Hey Hey My My in his suicide note. It's better to burn out than to fade away. This was a kind of a tribute to Neil Young's work. Uh, the as a lead singer of and front figure of one of the biggest bands of the decade, Kurt Cobain became reluctantly a duty buddy with to about 1 million people born in the 70s. It was behind the most darkest and depressed lyrics, since Morrissey had been the ultimate cover boy. The biography Heavier Than Heaven is written by Seattle-born and music journalist Charles R. Cross, a longtime editor of music magazine The Rocket. During the 4 years Cross worked with the book, he had done over 400 interviews with 97 of Kurt Cobain's friends and relatives. The result is a detailed statement which begins with Kurt Donald Cobain being born in February 20th in 1967 in Aberdeen, Washington, and it ends with a 6-year-old Frances Bean Cobain scattering her father's ashes in a creek behind her grandmother's house in Olympia, where Kurt Cobain lived for several years. Charles R. Cross has drawn a winning ticket because he earned Kurt Cobain's widow, Courtney Love's confidence. Courtney Love was interviewed and lent Cross Kurt's notebooks covering more than a decade and let him take advantage of unique musical recordings, homemade videos, notebooks, and family albums. What Courtney gave to Cross was exclusive material. Charles R. Cross does not waste any tearful descriptions. The subject matter is tragic enough as it is. Wendy and Don Cobain, Kurt's parents, met in high school and got married when he was 19 years old. The father worked as a mechanic, and Kurt was the first baby in the family for a long time. He showed an early talent for music. Kurt Cobain showed an early talent for music and art and was showered with attention and encouragement. His sister Kim was born 3 years after Kurt. One particular heartwarming passage in the book is when Charles R. Cross describes how the little family went sledding in the winter. Don and Wendy's though Don and Wendy's marriage was bound to crack, and when Kurt Cobain was 9 years old, and his parents parted, and the confident, happy little boy took the archetypical pattern of blame and became introverted. Uh, introverted and shy. What follows is a description of how a desperate man slowly kills himself. Kurt Cobain was mythologized during his lifetime by fans and journalists and even by himself. In a notebooks that cross-botanized in are examples of imaginative band biography and biographies and exercise in the future interview situations. Three famous claims that Kurt lived under a the three famous claims is that Kurt lived one under a bridge in Aberdeen after he had been kicked out from his home. Two, that he changed his stepfather's rifle into an electric guitar. And the third myth is that Courtney Love was the one who got him into drugs such as heroin. But in this book, Heavier Than Heaven, all of these three myths are shattered. The story about Kurt Cobain living under a bridge was immortalized in the song Something in the Way. It's refuted by both of his little sister Kim and Nirvana's Chris Novoselic. Sorry, can't express. Even if it is true that Kurt Cobain for several years didn't have a fixed address in Aberdeen. The second myth. Kurt Cobain got his first guitar from his uncle Chuck when he turned 14, and the truth about his heroin addiction is that he injected the drug the first time in 1990 with a friend in Olympia. To dispel thoughts of Bikini Kill drummer Toby Vale, which had left him to numb his constant nagging stomach. Immediately after Kurt Cobain's body was found, an electrician in his and Courtney Love's greenhouse, rumors began to circulate that it hadn't been suicide but a murder. Some claim that Courtney Love was the one who was behind the killing Kurt Cobain. In Heavier Than Heaven, Charles R. Cross simply shows how suicide was a part of Kurt Cobain's during most of his life. It was present both as an idea he earlier thought of as a way to escape, but also something inherited. Three male relatives in his father's side of the family had committed suicide before, and school friends remember how Kurt Cobain joked about tragedies. Cross chose to completely leave out all of the murder theories and writes instead that the suicide chapter based on what probably happened during the final hours is of Kurt Cobain's life. Heavier Than Heaven is not only a biography of Kurt Cobain, but also a detailed report on Nirvana's development. The story of the band who made grunge is inseparable from the story about Kurt Cobain. In that way, Heavier Than Heaven is also a biography of Nirvana. Thank you.